That's Alamisi. That's because in some customs, they don't immediately name. And that Alamisi followed me. When I was baptized, I chose the name Martin. Amidu is my father's name. When we were in Bokobiru boarding, there was the picture of, say, Alan Benz. And everybody called me Alan Benz. Even today, my classmates call me Alan Benz. So I decided to call myself Benz. Then when I did history in commercial school, we did the German Kaiser. And Adamu Sedu and go all, as Dano preferred, when I'm going to talk, they say silence, the Kaiser speaks. So I became Kaiser. And as I said, at one time in my life, I wanted to cancel all of them and be called Alamisi Amidu. Then when I got to law school, I read Gravin Williams. He says, what is there in a name? A name is a nonsense syllable. So if it's a nonsense syllable, why change it? So I left it. Critics and all that. But at least I'm trying. It is not for those who have not tried to criticize, but it is the one who has muddied, bloodied, and dirtied himself in pursuit of a higher object who takes the credit. Not
the chairman, but the man in the arena doesn't nod his chest as you are doing. I will say that you will settle these matters the Bulsa way. I am knowing that you are from Kadima. Give an assurance to this committee.
I think that it is unacceptable for the minority leader to use a tribal epic to describe a whole people. I think that that is a little bit... No, it's offensive to the tribe. You know, and I think that it is not fair. What is settling the Bulsawi? What does it mean? I mean, you are in the Mumbai, you don't talk like that.
I direct that part be taken off the record. He intended it as a joke. I think if the Bulsa way is offensive,
he should not make derisive remarks about Bulsas. I will never do that about the Gombes. One doesn't need to resign. The Supreme Court has held that while you are a public officer, you cannot take part in party politics. I think it involved Dr. Ajay and Co. I did that case in the Supreme Court. So I don't need to... No, even when you are a potential public officer, you are supposed to exhibit neutrality. So I don't need to make a formal resignation of anything. It's by operation of law. The whole idea about me being sacked and all that, there is a court judgment. And indeed, the government before it's left was pulling its legs from paying my benefits. And the present government, if they paid at the last end, before they even paid some of it, my interests are still piling. My official car since 2012, the court ordered it. It's still hanging there. But I'm following it. So anybody who gives the impression that I was dismissed for insubordination should go to the court and read the judgment and the terms of settlement. And there's a new Attorney General who should be able to make that available. So don't let us. And you see, let me say one thing. Professor Mills was a very close friend. And I was a very close confidant and advisor. And I'm saying that His Excellency Sir Bibanku Mensah, his secretary, and Colonel Lawson will tell you that there is no week he doesn't send for me specifically until the 13th. I don't know who asked him to call me and my brother's wife and put those questions to me. That's when I thought there was breach of trust. So I told him, I won't serve you again. I said it, that there's a breach of trust. You asked me to come as a friend. If you don't trust me again, I won't serve you again. And then the issue went on. Go and come at 3 o'clock. I said, I will send my resignation letter the moment I get to my office. His Excellency said, Mensa speaks in Hausa. I'm your senior brother. Come back. So I come back. Captain Chikata comes, takes me into a room. How can we seniors be here? And you are leaving us and going. Go and collect the money. So I go to court on the 16th. That's how come this letter eventually came. And then on the 19th, they announced that they had terminated my appointment. Then somebody goes to say I was terminated for misconduct. So I went to court. That's the situation. Bibakun is alive. He was ambassador to the Vatican, right? He was there. Martin Mills was there. Betty Mold Drusu was there. I was there. And Betty Mold's husband and myself continue talking. I have the emails here. Don't let us go there.
Thank you.
And that is why I wrote a tribute when Prof died. It pained me he died. And now I will tell those of you who are doubting that Prof and me were very close. Even after the event, Prof told people what he thought about being pressured to let me go.
And we have in the studio to help us have great discussions on the subject just about nearly 12 hours after the whole event. I have, well, here with me Dr. Ahmed Jinapor, who is a lecturer, and he is with the University of Education, Winneba. Thanks for joining me, Dr. Jinapor.
Thank you, Roland.
Somebody who's now regular on the show, helps us very often with our interpretation on legal issues and has his opinion often, is Martin Pebu. Martin Pebu is a legal practitioner. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Martin Pebu. Is it okay to be prefixing your name with lawyer Martin Pebu? You know, we have engineer, they say engineer. This pharmacist, they say farm. This.
Yeah, no, for us, no, we don't. So Martin Pebu is sufficient.
I think you're just a humble man. That's why.
Well, thank you.
Anyway, but let me just take your initial thoughts on, if you want to summarize. It was over 7 hours, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What would be your summary of the event in itself?
Wow, that's a difficult one. Okay, let's see. From my perspective, I would say it was quite an exciting day, to the extent that we had cleared another milestone in our bid to get this anti-corruption fight to a very earnest start. You know, to the extent that yesterday the committee at the end came out with a unanimous approval. That shows that Ghana is really a beacon of democracy in certain respects, because, you know, anti-corruption is such a divisive issue in itself because of the perceived witch hunting, you know. But looking at the proceedings itself, all in all, I would say that the divisiveness and those didn't take the day. So to the extent that we did it right, I mean, we should be very proud of ourselves, very proud. When it comes to the questions, I should say that some, naturally, were straight to the point, were what we expected. Others who were meant as jokes. So let's say that it's an admixture of everything that you would expect in life. You know, sometimes you have to make light issues of certain things, and then you would have the serious matters too.
I used to have a regular on the show who is now the High Commissioner for India, Michael Quaid Jr., who used to, during the campaign, say it was Shregum Potogu. What's your own summary, concise?
Well, let me say good morning to your cherished viewers, and let me wish my wife happy Valentine's Day. As you are aware, today is Valentine, and you know, ladies and Valentine. Yeah,
you're a month full of love.
Yes.
I love even your tie. It's red.
Well, I mean, that's the little that I can do.
Yeah.
Regard. I think Roland, I would say it was quite a productive exercise. Productive exercise in the sense that this is not the first time that we've seen vetting. I mean, we've had a number of ministers vetted, and people in public offices been vetted. In fact, of recent happened to be the Chief Justice. But yesterday's own was quite unique, and I think there are a number of lessons that comes out of it. In the sense that, number one, it gave us the opportunity to at least get a fair idea of who Martin Amidu is. In fact, I didn't even know that he was called Benz Kaiser, and and how he came about those names. At least we also had the opportunity of knowing his demeanor, his level of intellect, and in terms of his grasp when it comes to the law. There's no doubt that he's a very sophisticated person, somebody who is beyond reasonable doubt. I mean, very knowledgeable when it comes to the law, and I think lawyer people will attest to that. That said, I think yesterday's program also gave us the opportunity to have an appreciation of what that office really is, the Special Prosecutor's Office. In fact, for some of us, we thought it was an individual job, but the explanations that were being given transcends that. It's supposed to be an institution. And he even made the analogy of FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And he indicated that, look, this whole office is not just something that is just going to be set up and do a job for a certain period, but it's something that is supposed to stay. And if you look at the structure, we are looking at a board, we are looking at agencies, prosecutors, investigators. So it tells you it's a very complicated exercise, or it's a very complicated institution. And I see what happened to be the beginning of the whole process. Because if you are talking of an institution which you are looking at it being equivalent to something like FBI, it needs to be resourced. It needs to be what? It needs to be given at least the independence that it ought to have. Of recent, you remember what happened between Trump and the FBI director. So if in advanced democracies like the United States, we are having things of this sort and we want to replicate it, then this whole messianic posture that this is going to be a panacea to solving our corruption processes or our corruption deeds is something that we need to be extremely cautious in our optimism. I don't want to sound any kind of cynicism, but we have to be extremely cautious, because if you take countries like the United States, 400 years of democracy, and they still have these problems. And I know most of your viewers are very much aware of what happened between Trump and the FBI director and the Russian whole issue. The third lesson, which for me is very instructive, has to do with the whole process that they went through yesterday. Some have stated that it took about 8 to 9 hours, some say it's about 7 hours. But if you look at the depth of questioning of an individual, and in fact, the bipartisan, non-biased nature of the questioning, it looks at variance with what has been happening in terms of our vetting processes, where we have ministers who are supposed to occupy positions like Minister of Finance. I mean, people who are supposed to run the economy, and you look at the questioning that goes on. I think when you compare it to this, we need to seriously take a look again at what we do when it comes to appointment of ministers and people of higher office. Because, I mean, there was unanimity in terms of his approval, and that unanimity cuts across both sides of the political aisle. And even we who watched, I mean, the ordinary citizen, can agree to the fact that, look, this was a good job done. So, as I said, it's a beginning. We are looking at this program coming in to become one that will add up to what? Our corruption fight. And I always say that the success or failure of this whole office will be attributed to the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, because it's a legacy that he is bringing into being. And we've had offices like Chirac, Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, the Serious Fraud Office, when it came into being. You remember the euphoria, the ecstasy, and the excitement that... But today, Roland, you and I know that YOCO is more or less a political machinery that is used to go after what? Opponents. There's records to that. I don't want this to look to be like that. As Ghanaians, we only hope and pray that he's successful, and not just him, but the office is what is successful. And I think the onus lies on government to try as much as possible to what? To give them the necessary resources that is needed in terms of running that office.
All right. We know at the end of the day, Ghanaians also need to be given a lot more education on what really the office is coming to do. So let's have some lessons. I've gone through the law, but I'm not sure I'm very versatile with what the intricacies would be. We have STRAJ, we have YOCO, we have the other parastatals. This one is supposed to complement or supposed to do what?
So this one specifically is on corruption. You see, its primary focus is corruption, prosecution, and even education, you say. But IOCO is more generic on the whole gamut of organized crime, you say. So IOCO has a wider reach. But this particular one, you know, we've cried about the looting of the public purse, you say. So we want a specific mandate to deal with it. You know, even before this office was created, Shraj had asked for that power to prosecute. Excuse me. But eventually they didn't get it. So you can see that this fight has been on for some time now. So this particular Special Prosecutor's Office should focus, or must actually by the law, focus on anti-corruption, whilst IOCO does the other ones, as I said, in the sphere of organized crime. So for me, I think that is good because, you see, Roland, what maybe doesn't come to the fore too often is the fact that when it comes to prosecution of offenses in Ghana, okay, generally the Attorney General, IOCO, and the police are grossly understaffed. Yes, there's a huge challenge with human resources. They don't have enough prosecutors. So with this office, it means that we are adding on to the numbers. Yes, if you want to fight crime, one of the areas you should watch is the number of prosecutors you have. So Attorney General, as they operate now, they are grossly understaffed. You don't have enough. That's how come even, you know, we have over 90% of the prosecutors being lay policemen. You know, we've discussed this in the past. So I'm even excited to the extent that now we have a whole institution on anti-corruption, hopefully looking at the massive support this office is enjoying. It means that hopefully they can recruit as many lawyers as our resources can afford, so that we have more men on the ground, more investigators. You see, you need investigators, you need forensic experts, you see it. So for me, I don't think we have too many now. No, in actual fact, we haven't quite reached there, no. Because, you see, with this Office of the Special Prosecutor, very soon, and that's where I really wanted, I don't know if I missed that part of the interview, I really wanted to ask that. So Mr. Amidu should have been asked, looking at it, what's his plan? Maybe in the next 3-4 years, how many officers does he think he would need to run the office? You see, so when I say officers, it means the policemen, that's the investigators, the lawyers, and the forensic experts, and other persons who are needed. Yes, so that is where the real excitement will be, because, you know, Mr. Amidu is one human being. He can only do so much. So it's about the resources, as Dr. Jinapor had stated. It's about the resources that are available to him, both human and the non-human, logistics and those things. So to put it, to conclude on this matter, I think that we are not inundated with several institutions yet. No. In natural fact, we haven't even gone a quarter. We need more.
A lot more chicken will not spoil the soup.
Yes, and especially, as I said, so that gradually, as usual, as I keep saying, we'll phase out the policemen, so that our policemen can return to the barracks and focus on pure policing duties. Because right now, today, when you count the number of prosecutors, lay policemen count a number over 90% of the population of prosecutors, when we don't even have enough policemen to do crime fighting. So this is a good step.
But it looks like, Dr. Jinapor, it is more of him as the individual, what he brings to the office, that makes up the office. Is that so? And if that is so, what happens if we have, but in the future, as a special prosecutor who doesn't have the same character, temperament, and aura like him?
I think it's something that we need to be concerned about. There's no doubt that, Mr. Amidu is a celebrated anti-corruption crusader in this country. You look at his profile, his pedigree. Clearly, he's somebody who has demonstrated his zeal in terms of fighting corruption. That can be advantageous, and it can also have its own negative aspects. But I think for now, we need somebody of that caliber and of such charisma, because it's something that is starting. But I think, Roland, what we also need to be cautious about in terms of our excitement when it comes to this whole office. And I make reference to what my brother Pebu said. We don't want a situation whereby it will look as if we are creating offices that will tend to duplicate the ones that are already in existence. And I think there's evidence to that effect. If you remember, look, not to be diabolic, but there have been certain ministries that have been created in recent past that their roles and responsibilities more or less seems to be duplicating what other ministries are supposed to do. Case in point is the Ministry of Special Initiatives, was it Special Development Programs. You remember Ms. Hawa Kumsin's office, where the office, interestingly,
Special Initiatives.
Yes, happens to be purchasing ambulances, digging boreholes, and all those things. So when you have a situation whereby you have a police service or the Attorney General's office where we have a shortage of lawyers, where policemen are those who are serving as prosecutors, the best way to go about it is to try as much as possible to get more lawyers to go and do the job and give them the incentive for them to work harder and better. The problem that I have that seems not to have been given attention is that, look, the office of the special prosecutor does not work in a vacuum. The office of the special prosecutor is supposed to build a docket and take it to the court. Are the court system or the courts resourced? Do we have the number of judges to do the job? The speed. So you don't just look at fighting crime
in isolation.
There needs to be a connection. How many lawyers? Why is it that lawyers of his stature and caliber do not want to work in the Attorney General's office?
I keep wondering.
Because the incentives are not there. So if you are talking of investigators, people who will be able to prosecute, and you know one interesting thing, during his Q&A, one of the things that he made reference to was that, look, his interest is not supposed to take people to in Sawam. But if there are ways and means of negotiating with people to get the money, he will do that. What happens if we are not careful not to get into a situation whereby there's so many negotiations such that people tend to get kickbacks? You understand what I'm saying? So I think, look, it's a laudable initiative. And I'm always cautious in my excitement when it comes to these issues because there's history that goes to attest to that. I quite remember when we were little boys, when we were going into Constitution, I quite remember very well that, look, the opposition by then was against the Constitution as formulated. But the opposition said, look, let's vote for it because democracy is the best. I am not in any way going to suggest that when you juxtapose democracy with dictatorship, I'm going to go for dictatorship. But our expectations were so high that even today as it stands, we still have challenges when it comes to our democratic dispensation. So I have said, and I will continue to say, and I think it needs to be repeated, that the office of the special prosecutor is not and cannot be a panacea to fighting corruption in this country. It can do its own and it can do its best. The only way to fight corruption is leadership by example. Leadership by example.
All right.
The president has to demonstrate leadership. If Martin Amidu himself does not demonstrate leadership in terms of being against corruption and leading his team to demonstrate the will and the zeal to fight corruption, all this thing is going to come to waste.
And already, well, Kenny Japon is saying that he has to be called to order, and that. But at the end of the day, the right things need to be done for the office to thrive.
Yeah, that's correct.
Does it mean the office would need to be established on regional basis, have a regional office or regional outlet? Or how is it going to operate?
That is exactly the point I was raising earlier on. Naturally, we will need all that. Yes.
That's a duplication of SHRAJ.
No, as I said, SHRAJ doesn't have the power to prosecute.
I know.
So, and this one, you know, the prosecution, the power to prosecute is, I mean, let's just say it's the most important, so to speak, because ultimately you want to hold people responsible. So basically, I'm thinking that if we go into the regions, it won't be a duplication of SHRAJ at all. And after, if I remember, SHRAJ has an anti-corruption mandate and it's also the ombudsman. You see, so if in time Shraj sees that, okay, the office of the special prosecutor is doing so much, Shraj doesn't have much to do, they would concentrate on the other aspect, because Shraj itself is overwhelmed with the mandate. It's such a broad mandate. So as you rightly stated, we want to see the plan. Now that, I mean, hopefully he'll be approved by Parliament as soon as possible. We should see the plan, how it's going to roll out into the regions, because Ghana is not only Accra. Yes, so we need the institution in all the regions. Yes.
But there was an aspect about whether there could be an interference politically. Do you envisage that, knowing that, well, the Attorney General plays an instrumental role in let's say, a case at some level or at some approval point? I know that I'll come back to the lawyer.
Well, I think he responded to it, and in his answers, I think it's captured in the Daily Graphic, the front page, that crime has no political coloration. As to whether politicians would like to interfere, there's no doubt about it. I mean, we are human beings.
Yes.
Human beings by our nature, we are always interested in taking care of our own, and being interested in seeing to it that, look, people who are close to us get the best of whatever it is. But as I said, I don't want to limit it to just the individual of Martin Amidu. Of course, his demeanor, his orientation, and his character is extremely important in terms of fashioning how this office works, and setting it as a model for others to emulate. But as I said, the office of the special prosecutor is going to contribute its quota in terms of fighting corruption. And in terms of fighting corruption, its contribution will depend on what the leadership, that is the presidency, wants it to do, in terms of giving it the necessary resources that is needed, giving it the freedom and the leeway to be able to do what is expected to do. But mind you, Roland, what was evident during the vetting yesterday was that, look, the special prosecutor is not just going to haul people to court or put them in jail, but those people are going to be given what? The opportunity to defend themselves. And that is where I made the point that, look, in doing all this, I think it's very, very important and instructive that the law courts are resourced. You need to have the best of judges who are unbiased, who are not themselves corrupt, to adjudicate on these issues. If you have a judge who is sitting on the bench and he himself is corrupt, then how are you going to fight corruption? So it's a complicated enterprise. It's not just a single individual institutional affair. And that is why I keep saying that, look, in as much as I'm very optimistic that this is going to add up to the fight against corruption, and I think the president needs to be commended for taking that bold initiative. It's a first step. But I don't think that is going to be a panacea in solving all our corrupt practices. The individual, the person, I mean, if I'm a teacher, and Roland, I happen to be working and I work for 30 years, and after the 30 years, I don't have a guarantee of a retirement. My salary is such that there's no way that I'll be able to put up a 3-bedroom house.
Is that the case?
No, but I mean, I'm just developing a hypothesis. Okay. Why wouldn't I be enticed to steal when I'm given the opportunity? And that is why I believe that, look, the economy must be made such that, look, the ordinary policeman should be guaranteed of what? A safe retirement.
So he will not
Today,
think of...
No, he will not think of taking money. Today you are
so only few of them will think, and not the larger number.
These are all steps and measures to reduce corruption. The argument being made here is that this special prosecutor's office is supposed to augment the fight against corruption. And I believe that in as much as it's commendable and it needs to be it needs to be encouraged, I think there needs to be economic empowerment. When you have economic empowerment...
Generally.
Yes, you have economic empowerment, people are guaranteed of retirement, and even the citizenry are educated and sophisticated enough not to give out 1 cedi to the policeman standing on the streets. But that person makes sure that, look, my roadworthy is is accurate, my driver's license is correct, my insurance is correct. Why would the policeman even ask me for For money? And Rona, you know very well, when we are driving, the policeman is very careful the kind of people that he asks for For money. When I have my UTax sticker on my card, he never asks me for money. it even becomes worse when he has what, a bar.
When they see a journalist,
So I think
a medical doctor, they don't try.
That is it. So I think, and I'm not limiting this to just the police officer. It cuts across board.
It could be the tax office.
It even could be the teacher, the ordinary lecturer. You get my point. So I think this whole fight against corruption, I think yesterday what happened, it starts the debate, and it starts the reconscientization of the general public that look. And you know, Martin Amidu made a very interesting comment. He said, one of the biggest challenges that we have is that we are not able to stand up to authority. If you remember where he made the reference to the zombie lawyer, where the attorney general. So I as I said, it's a very productive exercise that took place yesterday. I just hope that look, the wind.
So you're saying that, well, all this whirlwind about a new dawn, etc. It's positive, but we should exercise some caution.
Okay,
let's get an insight from the man, Martin Amidu, nominee for Special Prosecutor, and then we'll come back and get some reactions also from Martin Pebu, a legal practitioner in the studio.
What will be different between the Special Prosecutor's office and whatever office of law enforcement? And the reason why I agreed to accept the nomination is that this is a new office. Corruption has done so much damage to this country. In the conflict resolution, it is called structural violence. It's an invisible violence that kills millions without anybody seeing it. Taking millions of cedis for oneself under illegal circumstances deprives people of good health, education, and all the developmental facilities you can give. So what I want to do is to be able to set up a credible institution with a credible culture, which will be able to block the leakages and the seepages. If I'm able to do that, I don't care even whether I am not able to prosecute anybody. And part of the law says that it is preventative. Right? So if I can put the machinery in place to prevent these leakages and seepages, I can assure you that if we succeed, we won't need foreign aid. I will say, with knocking my chest, that the amount of seepages and leakages at the ports, if we were to close them, our budget will not need foreign assistance. And that is why I accepted this job, to try to help the people of this country to see whether what I started fighting as a child can at least be realized to some extent, in the hope that whoever takes over from me will keep the spirit. And so I can go to my maker knowing very well that my colleagues who died during the PNDC did not die in vain. And that when I beat them, they'll say, Martin, you did well for us, even though you didn't succeed. Thank you. And that is where President Roosevelt talks about the man in the arena. Being accused of personalizing things and acting one man. This is going to be an office, and I would rather think that we should wait for the full component of the office so that knowledge will be shared, and then we will do a collective action. But one thing I wish to assure you is that we will employ investigators who must be independent and impartial. Prosecutors must be independent and impartial. We will take them through vetting, and I'm hoping that civil society and donor community who are all interested in the excising the canker will help us to put in place the best staff and instill the best culture so that when I leave, it should be able to go on.
Martin Amidu. And Mr. Pebu, so we're supposed to be having him leading the team, etc. So at what point then would we start seeing some fruition? After, let's say, if he's approved, and then we go forward with that. When would we want to see some fruition?
Meaning that, look, if we reckon time from, maybe we should be looking at the list will be 3 months from now, because you know Parliament is going to approve, and then he would go into office. He would need to recruit lawyers, as he just stated, the investigators and the other persons to assist the office. So the recruitment process, in actual fact, by 3 months' time, they would not have been done, but at least they would have had sufficient number of persons to start from somewhere. So we should be looking at the next 3 months.
Okay. Yeah. So how confident should we be, knowing that now we have the special prosecutor, all the other things that the media keeps speculating about would now be the fulcrum around which the office can operate, and not just the individual?
Well, I think in terms of how confident we should be, that was a question, right? I think that, first of all, the person who occupies that office more or less inspires some kind of confidence, if you happen to have listened to him. And even if you look at the highlights, this is definitely a man who assumes confidence, and not just assumes confidence, but he's somebody who is very knowledgeable in terms of what he's expected to do. So if you ask me, am I confident? I think I am. And today I'm tempted to believe that if you look at even the print media, everywhere they are talking about Martin Amidu. And you agree with me that based on his demeanor, his posture, and his level of confidence, it sends shivers of fear to would-be corrupt officials. and that, I think, it's a good beginning, because, you see, there needs to be, Roland, and I've always said this, there needs to be some kind of fear being
Some
put,
level of reawakening.
that is it, being put in people that, look, if you do this, this is going to be the consequence. But where you have a situation, especially in this part of the world, in Ghana, I mean, corruption is held. It's held and is accepted as a cultural norm, such that if I, Dr. Jinapor, sitting here, a teacher, if tomorrow I'm made a minister and within a year I don't build a house, they are going to say that I'm a useless person. That is the culture that we have. But you listen to him, it puts fear in people. And I think that we can build on that by giving him the necessary resources and the necessary tools. Look, Roland, Ashantis have been saying that, I mean, but it is kind of, all these things that we are talking about, you need money. You need money to what? To recruit the best of investigators. You need money to what? To recruit the best of lawyers. You need money to even prosecute. And mind you, these individuals or these supposed corrupt officials that we are talking about have made so much money that they can get the best of lawyers to defend them. They can get the best of lawyers to defend them. So I think it's a war that he's going to be waging. And
it's a war?
Of course, it's a war. It's a war because, I mean, think about it. You've been a minister and you are going to be put behind bars. I mean, your integrity is going to be destroyed. You saw it before. Do you remember what's his name? The former minister for Agric, former ADB.
Ibrahim Adams.
Ibrahim Adams. You remember when he went through? You remember Chatuchi Kata and all these individuals. I'm not saying they are criminals, but I'm saying we have experiences of that. And I think this is going to take the same nature when it comes to the fight against corruption. So it's going to be a war that he's going to be fighting. And to get into war, you definitely need the resources and the tools to be able to fight. I'm yet to hear the budget that is going to be allocated to him. And mind you, this program is going to take what? A long process. You ask a lawyer whether they are going to establish branches at what? The regional offices. I think it might even trickle down to the district level. But you need to build the foundation, which is what? At the head office. We are being told that her deputy has been nominated. There's somebody who has been nominated for the position of deputy. I think that person also needs to be what? To be vetted. And I want to see the caliber of person that she's going to show to the public. I mean, the kind of person that she is. Because this is supposed to be a teamwork. It's not just we are supposed to get what? A board that is supposed to regulate. So it's a very complicated office. And I think it will take time for it to what? To develop. But you and I know very well that the expectation is very high. The expectation is very, 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 very high. Within 2, 3, 4 months, people are going to be asking, where are the corrupt people that you say you are going to... And especially when this office was a political office. Political office because President Nana at the time, one of the huge issues that toppled the Mahama administration had to do with corruption. And I found it a little bit for want of a better word, I found it quite unfortunate when Martin Amidu was asked that all the epistles that he was writing about John Mahama being corrupt, and he said that they were perceptions. I find it very, very unfortunate. Very, very, very unfortunate, because those epistles and contributions, because he was a man of stature, somebody who went to the Supreme Court over Wyoming, somebody who was seen as an anti-corruption crusader, and they asked you that, look, all these things that you were talking about John Mahama and his government, that they were corrupt, and he said they were mere perceptions. I find it quite unfortunate, and I would have thought that the chairman should have allowed him to answer the question, and at best, if not necessarily providing evidence, but you should have expatiated, and to even indicate as of yesterday whether he still stood by that position. Because I can't believe, because this office was a political,
you mean the subject?
No, the subject. The subject, because Namadu.
So you're saying that his actions or inactions within the electioneering
contributed to the toppling of President Mahama. And if today, no, there's no doubt about it.
Was an agent of a regime change.
Of course. And I think he even said it. He said it publicly.
Because of his stature.
Yeah, and he even said it publicly that, look, if Ghanaians want to get their money from Wyoming, then they should what? They should kick the Mahama administration out. He said it publicly. So, as I said, let's hope that the office, in terms of the benefits that we hope to be accrued out of it, materialize. I hope and pray that government will give the office the necessary support and the necessary logistics that it needs in fighting this whole canker of corruption. And I think that the logistics and materials that are needed needs to be provided with speed and in adequacy, because this whole fight is not just an ordinary fight, but it's a war, and you will see how it unfolds in this country.
Mr. Kwebu, how can we insulate the office from political interference? I'm premising my question on the fact that since 1993, well, I think that maybe not since 1993, maybe since 2001, the perception of corruption has increased to an astronomical level. And this has played out in the media. The media has also been instrumental. So in the mind's eye of the Ghanaian, it is assumed that whatever comes into the media is the truth. And whatever comes out of the mouth of a politician on a political platform is the truth. And so we'll want results. How can we insulate this institution from political interference?
Wow. Okay, so let me start with the first comment about the perception when you said perhaps from 2001. Not a fact, when you go down a bit, I'm sure you know it in our history, dating from Kwame Nkrumah's regime. Corruption is always been part of the reasons.
I remember
before it started with Adam.
I remember during after Nkrumah was stopped, etc. There were issues that were Edu said having a golden bed and all that.
So and then after Nkrumah's regime, the other one, 60.
The Buzia regime.
A lot of 72. You know, all those ones. All of them. When you check, when Rawlings came for the house cleaning exercise. So that's one thing that struck me. So it means that today we are not different from our ancestors in 1957. Ghanaians have always hated corruption, yet it's always thrived in our society. So that's how come when Doctor says we should be cautious, he has a lot to say. Yes, we've always hated it, and yet when you check our culture, the way we live, we kind of foster it. So we hate it, yet we are fostering it. Well, we'll leave that for posterity to judge. But as you stated, with the appointment of Mr. Amidu, when he's appointed, it's going to help a lot in curbing this canker. Now, this political interference, that's a very difficult thing. The first human instinct is self-preservation. So there is no way that you can say you can have a system that will totally prevent political interference. But naturally, we'll have to do something about it. So the first is what the president has done in this case, by appointing somebody whom everybody has confidence in. So I think, and that is the main thing.
You think that's the first step? That's
the first step.
That's a cardinal.
Yes, very cardinal, because the man, of course, he's human. He's not an angel. But when it comes to anti-corruption, we all have this confidence in him. So that's the first step. The second one is to make sure that he's resourced. Yes, because you see, there are very subtle ways of making sure that the office doesn't succeed. Yes. So political interference, it doesn't always have to be that
a direct one.
Exactly. It can be subtle by starving the office. When the office is starved, then you see whether you can fight.
When the office needs documents.
Exactly.
And they need some information.
Exactly.
Okay.
Funds will not be released and all those. So exactly. Yes. Just make sure that you are emasculated. You gasp for air. You won't even find any. You know, Ghana, we are quite adept at doing some of these things. I mean, if you watch our history, when people say they will show you where power lies, don't play with don't play with them. There are so many ammunitions in the arsenal. Okay, armory. So let's say, apart from that, also the media. You know, so far you did such a fantastic job on this matter. So, as part of insulating the office from political interferences, I think something like maybe Joy, I'm sure you've already been doing it, but I'm answering, so I have to articulate it. So you have a special reporter, or let me say dedicated reporter, who would constantly be at the office of the special prosecutor, nosing for news. You see, so as you keep educating us about how the office is taking shape. So as we've stated now, when he's appointed, he assumes office, the steps he will take to recruit, even before they recruit, recruitment of lawyers and the rest, there must first be the board, the nominations from the various institutions. So keep covering it. So all I'm saying in a word is that the more light you shine on the institution, then the more you're able to keep away the interferences. Okay. Yeah, so as humanly as possible, these are some of the steps that we can take to insulate the office from these political interferences.
All right. How do we insulate that?
Well, I think the Act in itself makes provisions for that, because number one, this is an individual who is even though he's been appointed by the president, he has a secure tenure of office for 7 years, and that in itself gives him the opportunity to be able to do whatever he's supposed to do. I think the person of Martin Amidu himself is extremely important in terms of being able to curb political interference. That being, he must be a man of integrity. When you happen to be somebody that everybody knows that you are not somebody who is deemed as a boogeyman or trying to do the dirty job of what politicians.
You are not pushover.
You are not pushover. And even he needs to exemplify integrity. Somebody that we know that, look, this person is not going after party A or party B, but he's going for what? The people who are doing the wrong thing. And as I said, his work will be cut out for him if we have a fair, unbiased judiciary. Because if you happen to be taking cases to court, you remember Kwabena J's, there are so many ways of killing the cat. You know, when you have an individual taking cases to court, and these courts, and there are evidence to the fact that, look, excuse me to say, some of the people on the bench can be bribed. Some of the people on the bench can be bribed. You remember Amas Arameya's expose. So you happen to take people to court, and each time that you get to court, you keep on hitting the wall. Definitely, people are going to start what? Agitating. And I would especially caution Ghanaians to be cautious in terms of their expectations.
Cautious optimism.
Cautious optimism. I mean, look.
Anyway.
And I think government themselves too has to be a little bit careful in terms of their utterances. In terms of their utterances, in the sense that when the NPP was in the position, one of the wheels upon which it came into power was what? Allegations of corruption being leveled against the Mahama administration. Today, they've been given the power and the authority to investigate. But when it so happens that each and every time you keep reminding the people of what? Corruption, then the people will be expecting that, look, you need to what? You need to prove your case. And you know, as a lawyer knows that, look, the wheels of justice, it grinds slowly, even though it will definitely get to what? Martin Amidu will not tomorrow go around, bundle all former NDC or appointees and put them in jail.
You think that conscientization is not there?
Well,
so it can't just happen in a day.
It doesn't work that way.
Or even may not happen at all.
It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way because every person who is accused is given the opportunity of fair hearing in a competent court of jurisdiction. And we are talking of cases where individuals are in high office and have been able to accrue so much money that they are able to get the best of lawyers to defend them. And even in some instances, they are even able probably to buy the bench. So let's be extremely careful. No, I mean, there's evidence to that.
I think the bench is quite strong now.
It's quite strong now, but there's evidence where judges were giving goats. They were giving goats and...
so isn't there even from independence?
And that is why I keep on saying that.
Strong goat.
And that is why...
It's strong, so
that is why I keep on saying that, look, in as much as we want this office to work and this office to be productive, it is also important for us to resource the judiciary.
All right.
Let's give the judges the necessary motivation that they need, and let's give them the necessary tools that they can use to adjudicate on most of these cases.
All right. Thank you very much. That'll be it for our conversation. You have had a long-standing conversation on this subject. Even from yesterday, you were helping. We brought a camera to you yesterday morning, right?
It was Skype.
Skype. Skype. You see, if you're not technologically adept, but that's not true though. I'm very much aware of that. But thank you very much. Martin Pebu, legal practitioner, and then also Dr. Ahmed Jinapor is a lecturer with the University of Education, Winneba. Thanks for joining me, Ahmed.
Thank you, sir.
All right.